In August 1994, a police officer in Michigan pulled over a 17-year-old boy named David Hahn. The officer was looking for stolen tires, but as he approached the car, he noticed something strange. David was acting extremely nervous, and he warned the officer that the trunk was hot. The officer didn't know it yet, but David wasn't talking about stolen goods. He was talking about invisible deadly radiation that was leaking into the street from a homemade device. The police called for a team equipped with Geiger counters. When they finally opened the trunk, the meters began to scream. The levels were so high they violated federal laws. David was not a criminal or a terrorist. He was an Eagle Scout. He told the officers he had built a nuclear reactor in his mother's backyard and was trying to hide the evidence before the government could find it. He had turned a quiet neighborhood into a ticking radiological time bomb. This was not a high-tech laboratory. It was a garden shed made of wood and plastic. David wanted to solve the world's energy crisis to earn a Scout badge, but in the process, he created a neutron source so powerful it could be detected from houses away. This is the insane story of the Radioactive Boy Scout, a teenager who came terrifyingly close to causing a nuclear meltdown in a regular American suburb. No one realized that the kid next door was playing with the building blocks of the sun. David Hahn was not like other teenagers. While his friends were playing games or playing sports, David was locked away, obsessed with the invisible forces that hold the universe together. He didn't just want to study chemistry and physics. He wanted to master them. He turned his basement into a high-risk laboratory, performing experiments that would make professional scientists nervous. He once accidentally blew up his bedroom, filling the house with toxic smoke. But even that didn't stop his pursuit of power. His ultimate goal was something most people thought was impossible for a kid. He wanted to achieve a nuclear chain reaction, the same process that powers the sun and the most destructive weapons on Earth. To build a reactor, you need radioactive materials that are impossible for a civilian to buy. But David was brilliant. He realized that the world is full of radioactive elements hidden inside everyday household items. He started a massive collection, spending every dollar he had on items most people throw away. His first target was the common smoke detector. Inside each unit is a tiny piece of americium. David began buying hundreds of them from hardware stores to harvest their cores. He spent weeks in his shed, carefully cutting them open with pliers and a blowtorch. The work made him feel sick and dizzy, but he did not stop. He eventually collected enough americium to create a dangerous source of alpha particles right in the middle of a residential neighborhood. After that, David needed thorium. He found it inside the mantles of old camping lanterns. These small fabric nets glow bright when heated, but they also contain radioactive powder. David bought thousands of lantern mantles and used a kitchen stove to burn them down into ash. He then used a sophisticated chemical process with lithium from batteries to purify the thorium. His garden shed was slowly becoming a death trap, filled with toxic fumes and invisible particles that settled on his clothes. But David was still missing the most important ingredient: uranium. He spent his weekends driving around Michigan with a Geiger counter, looking for old clocks with glowing dials. These clocks used radium paint, which is highly radioactive. He would scrape the paint off the dials and collect it in small vials. He even contacted a company in Czechoslovakia to try and buy uranium, pretending to be a professional buyer who needed samples for a high-level research project. To get the most restricted materials, David had to lie. He created a fake identity, calling himself Professor David Hahn. He wrote letters to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and big energy companies. He asked technical questions about how to build a reactor and requested samples of radioactive isotopes. To his surprise, the experts believed him. They sent him detailed instructions and radioactive samples directly through the mail, never suspecting they were talking to a kid in high school. The companies thought they were helping a fellow scientist. They had no idea they were sending deadly information and materials to a teenager working in a shed behind his mom's house. David was now receiving materials like tritium and beryllium. He was building a neutron gun, a device used to blast atoms and start a nuclear chain reaction. He was no longer just a hobbyist. Inside a simple backyard shed, he was successfully splitting atoms using a device he'd built from plywood, duct tape, and aluminum foil. The heart of the shed was a messy heap of lead and foil. There, David brought his radioactive sources together, unaware that his central core was becoming a silent, invisible threat. His mother noticed the strange smells and the blue glow coming from the shed at night, but David told her it was just a chemistry project. She wanted to believe him, but the truth was that the air inside that shed was becoming a thick soup of radioactive dust. He was standing at the center of a growing invisible cloud without any real protection. By late 1994, the experiment worked too well. David's Geiger counter began to click so fast that it sounded like a constant high-pitched hum. He realized that the radiation was now detectable through the walls of the shed and even in his neighbors' houses. He had successfully created a neutron source, but he had no way to turn it off or shield it. Fearing that he would cause a massive disaster, he decided to dismantle the lab and hide the evidence in the trunk of his car. After the police stop, the FBI and the Environmental Protection Agency moved in. When they saw the data from the Geiger counters, they declared a state of emergency. The neighborhood was flooded with men in white hazmat suits. They were shocked to find that the shed was so radioactive it had to be treated as a high-level waste site. The government had to dismantle the shed piece by piece. It was loaded into 36 heavy steel drums to prevent a localized environmental catastrophe. The cleanup was an expensive nightmare. They even had to dig up the soil and the trees around the area because the radiation had seeped into the ground. All of David's hard work was loaded onto a truck and driven to a secret disposal site in the Utah desert, where it remains buried under layers of concrete today. David was never charged with a major crime, mostly because the government didn't know how to handle a boy who had followed his scout manual a little too literally. David eventually joined the Navy and worked on nuclear-powered aircraft carriers. It seemed like his life was back on track, but the obsession never truly left him. In 2007, David was arrested again. He was caught stealing smoke detectors from the hallway of his apartment building. His face was covered in sores, a clear sign of long-term radiation exposure. He was still trying to recreate the experiments of his youth. It was a tragic sight for a man who was once a brilliant young pioneer. David Hahn passed away in 2016 at the age of 39. His story is a chilling reminder of the power of the atom and the dangers of unchecked curiosity. He proved that a determined teenager could build a nuclear reactor in a shed, but he also proved that some secrets of the universe come with a deadly price. He remains the only person to ever earn a Boy Scout merit badge for nearly causing a nuclear meltdown. His story warns us that brilliance without caution can lead to disaster.